On the outskirts of the forgotten town stretched a cemetery, shrouded in eternal gloom. There, among the forgotten graves and bowed headstones, stood an old guardhouse, a place where every night was an unbearable ordeal for the watchman. Ivan, the old watchman of the cemetery, considered himself a living ghost. His shadow wandered between the graves, and his eyes, staring into the vast darkness, saw the evil lurking in every corner of the cemetery. Each shift became a hell for him, a trial from which there was no escape. The first night began silently, but a wind whispering words of terror passed between the old crosses. Ivan felt unknown eyes watching his every step. A shadow touched his back like a living shadow, and he felt something cold breathing on the back of his neck. His heart was beating at a frantic rhythm, and the sounds coming from the depths of the cemetery filled the air with mysterious whispers. The second night was even more frightening. Among the graves, he heard the muffled moans and footsteps of the dead awakening from their eternal sleep. He saw ghostly figures passing through the shadows and felt the touch of cold hands as he passed the abandoned grave monuments. The third night brought with it real terror. Coffins began to rise from the ground, and the groans intensified to screams. Ivan struggled for sanity as the ghosts of his ancestors began to emerge from their graves, making sounds of anguish and meaninglessly repeating words lost to the ages. He saw the glowing eyes, the piercing stares of the ghosts that pierced his soul. Around every corner, a new nightmare awaited him. The cemetery was becoming a labyrinth of horror, and the watchman could find no way out of this hell. The last night was the most agonizing. As the shadows thickened to the extreme, Ivan found himself in the very center of the cemetery, surrounded by ghosts uttering cries of despair. The names of the dead rang in his ears, and he could feel his own name being whispered by the dark wind. With the last ghost gone, the world around him froze. Ivan, exhausted, met the dawn, but his soul remained locked in the cemetery. Since he disappeared into the darkness, no watchman had dared to take over the cursed post. The legend of the cemetery lived on long after Ivan's disappearance. The townspeople said that his soul still wandered between the graves, hearing the sounds of suffering and the cries of ghosts, unable to find peace. The cemetery remained a dark and mysterious place where even the bravest dare not dare to set foot. Despite the flying years, the cemetery remained a stone testament to misfortune, a story no one wanted to remember. The town suffered a curse, and the old guardhouse was abandoned like a warning sign. One evening, as darkness descended on the cemetery once more, a wanderer appeared in the town. His name was Alexei, and he had been told about the cemetery in a tavern where the locals preferred to keep quiet about the past. However, bribed by curiosity and thirst for adventure, Alexei decided to test the veracity of the legend. As the night progressed, the winds began to whistle fiercely between the old trees, and the cemetery's darkness seemed to absorb every sound. Alexei, treading cautiously along the path, approached the guard booth. His gaze met the gloomy shadows, and ghostly cries sounded in his ears. A strange chill enveloped him as he stepped inside the booth. An ancient book with scratched covers lay behind a worn table covered with a layer of dust. The hands on the clock ticked mysteriously, as if frozen in time. Alexei opened the book, and the story of Ivan, a watchman consumed by the dark influence of the cemetery, appeared before him. Each page revealed new horrors, and he felt Ivan's soul groaning in the grip of indescribable fear. Suddenly, the winds began to scream, eclipsing the sounds of ghostly moans. Shadows began to dance, seeming to thicken around Alexei. Ghostly cries echoed in the depths of the cemetery, and a dark wind penetrated the inside of the booth, causing the candles to flicker and go out. Like a living entity, Ivan's shadow appeared before Alexei. Her eyes were full of suffering, and her voice filled the air with past agony. She whispered about how the cemetery had consumed his soul, turning him into a shadow, carrying his fear through the ages. Alexei realized that he needed to free Ivan and consecrate the cemetery. He gathered his wits and, following the instructions in the book, began to perform the ritual of purification. The darkness of the cemetery resisted, but Alexei continued to fight despite his fear. Every moment the surroundings became brighter. When the ritual was over, Ivan's shadow disappeared and the cemetery was at peace. The wind winds died down, and the ghostly cries became only an echo in the past. Alexei, leaving the cemetery in silence, left it knowing that he had done something important. The legend became history, and the town found peace again. But the old cemetery guard, freed from darkness, remained in the memory of those who dared to look into his world. From that day on, the cemetery ceased to be a cursed place. The city forgot its fear, and the old watchtower became a mere ruin from a time long past. Alexei left the city, but his exploit became a legend, told around the campfire on dark nights. Nevertheless, Ivan's shadow was not forgotten. People claimed that she continued to wander among the graves, but now she carried not suffering, but blessing. Many believed that her soul had found peace, and she became the guardian of the cemetery, protecting it from dark forces. Time passed, and the cemetery became merely a historical artifact, forgotten amidst the daily life of the town. But those who listened carefully to the stories knew that in the shadows of the past lurked secrets that could awaken dark forces. And somewhere far away in the heavens a star shines, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there is a light that can chase away the darkness.